This is one of those normal challenges, so it's peculiar to the protest, but it would have been really good to hold a conversation with the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodimma. We know how much he has advocated for support for the president, and it would be nice to know the details of what exactly the Southeast hold dearly to have stayed away from this protest. But then some would say this is just day one. I mean, for those who follow the NSAS protests, day one wasn't anything. Day two probably wasn't anything. And as the days went by, the protests grew and other states began to join. So let's see how that goes. Let's go back to the conversation now. We still have Professor Emmanuel Ayede, who's a professor of political institutions, governance, and public policy. We also have Professor Ademola Abbas, who's a professor of international law, global security expert, and Segun Sopiton, who is chairman ACT Good Governance Advocate. So let me throw the question to Professor Ademola Abbas now as you're like the nexus between politics and security. So when we look at what's going on with regard to the protests and the escalations across the country, where do you fault the handling? Where do you fault the handling? There are arrests now. Some say they could have been prevented. For example, the situation in Maraba, we learned about it much earlier in the day, before it escalated to this point where they burned down the police post, not the station, based on the statement of the FCT police PRO. So what exactly do you think could have been done better to prevent this?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me because it's recording. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Right, yeah. Look, people have expressed a lot of opinion whether this was entirely avoidable or not, and look, we can debate that. But in terms of handling, I think we are operating in the context of a government, and this is not peculiar to this particular government. That must make clear. But in the context of a government, in the context of a government being very, very reactive, they hardly proactive. Look, when you talk about security, securing Nigeria or securing this kind of environment that we find ourselves in, you're not talking about naked security, which is unfortunately what the Nigerian government, successive government have understood security to be. Security has less to do with bombs and bullets at the end of it. The United Kingdom, as an example, London as a city is the CCTV camera of the universe in terms of, being caught when you go. You don't really see, when you go to London, as an example, you only see policemen carrying baton, tutu, they're always in pair, and they'll be chit-chatting, just talking. You don't really see naked guns, in hand. But then, that is a society in which you guys have an act of terrorism, within a few minutes, somebody is caught. Security is felt, not necessarily seen. But in Nigeria, we have got ourselves locked into the system that when we see plentiful of guns and bullets, we are secure. Remember a few years ago, as an example, when we were hosting a beauty pageant in Nigeria during a particular crisis, and the center was awash with military, personnel carrying guns and this and that. That is what we understand as security. That is not security. In fact, the first symptoms of insecurity in any society that understands security is how many people are carrying guns and bullets in your environment. So as I'm saying, security is felt, not necessarily seen most times. So these will have been tackled. We will have identified the root causes of these protests. And as somebody has said, and it's been said over and over, Nigerians are very easy to please. What Nigerians want from their government is ever so little. All Nigerians want today is the ability to be able to do their work, go about their normal businesses without any fear of molestation, be able to have money in their pocket. If they have kids who are going to school, be able to pay their school fees of their kids, which means have water, have light, and so on and so forth. But we don't give that to Nigerians. No. So we already have serious issue of human insecurity in the country. And then when we begin to make policies in Nigeria, we are not addressing the root causes of human insecurity. Nigeria today, only Indonesia in the whole world has a faster doubling rate than Nigeria demographically. Nigeria has the second highest doubling rate in the world. In other words, it is the second biggest country in terms of doubling its population. The only thing the world knew really seriously about China until about 1989 was the Tiananmen Square, when China was pretty a close country. But within 15 years, we saw China being able to move almost 500 million people from abject poverty to almost middle class. That is a feat. What are we doing with our youth? We have a youth bulge crisis in Nigeria. Nobody's addressing that. Nigeria is awash with talented and incredibly talented youth who is harnessing their resources, who is harnessing their abilities, who is harnessing their expertise. We have our youth living this country. Some of them are unable to complete their education. They go overseas and they perform miracles overseas academically. Technologically, they perform miracles. They are Nigerian youths, for goodness sake. So we have a government that has lost complete. I'm not talking again about this particular government. I'm talking about successive governments in Nigeria. They've not really understood what security means in the recent time. What they are doing is systemic security. That is the problem we are facing.
I think it's good that you talk about successive governments because some of the conversations I've had with analysts has always been that governments are supposed to plan for the future, not for the now. So governments are supposed to build for the future such that even if I'm not in power tomorrow, the next person coming after me has a basis to continue. Is that something that we have seen in this country? Or is it perhaps the biggest problem we have? Because if you take an example of the Buhari administration, which is the immediate past administration, and they talk about lifting 100 million people out of poverty, what do you see that was laid on ground that the Tinubu administration should have picked up from to at least continue that trend?
Well, it's a very interesting question. Look, and it will make a fantastic doctoral thesis to actually go into that in this country. Look, we're dealing with a system, we're dealing with a governance system in which you can say, I used to say that those who should be governing Nigeria are on the streets. Those who should be on the streets are governing Nigeria. That is the shame of this country. When we were in schools, the most brilliant students will sit in front of the class. Because you are the guardians of your teachers. They will call you when they want to ask questions. The less gifted ones will be at the back. But in our public life, what do we see? The less gifted ones are the ones in the front in Nigerian colleges. And the gifted ones who used to be in the front of the class now, they take the back seat. I don't need to start mentioning it. We know the kind of system we find ourselves in. And that is the tragedy of Nigeria today as a country. Government does not plan for anything. Government only in Nigeria only plans for now. I was talking to somebody, so I was making a postulation that one of the solutions to my mind to Nigeria's crisis is when you begin to actually, probably maybe at a microscopic level of governorship or whatsoever, make a law that a governor who comes from a local government, who is going to spend 4 years in office, should not develop that particular local government, should focus on other local governments in that state. When you do that, you know whoever comes in another local government will develop your own destiny. But the problem we have in Nigeria is that I will feel, I'm from this particular local government. The government is there, it's not serving my interest. So I want to be in government. I want to be in government just so that I can go and pay my people. I can go and take care of my people. We have ghettoized governance in Nigeria in a very, very unpalatable manner. And that is part of our tragedy. So Nigeria, as our government, do not have a comprehensive plan, successive plan that will look into the future. But hey, if you have any other lawyer, if you have any other lawyers in your panel, the first thing they teach you in law school in any faculty of law is you cannot give that which you do not have. It's not possible. So if you have people who dominate your governance space, who are clueless, who are severely unintelligent, who do not understand what governance is, who don't even understand the basic element of stability and governance in the country, and then the stratosphere of your governance, then what do you expect? It's not possible. You cannot give that which you don't have, which is, let me say, nemo that common habit. You can't give what you don't have. So it's high time we began in Nigeria to get people who actually understand governance, who understand security, who understand futurology of policies, who understand that we can sit down and say, we want to have Agenda 2050. How can I take any government to this seriously in Nigeria? Who's talking about Agenda 2030 when I am in this kind of problem already in Nigeria in 2024 and I don't know where it's going to end? When people are focusing on this particular government, I fault them. I said, whether you like it or not, whatever the present government is doing is a accumulation of almost 70 years of bad governance in Nigeria. It is cumulative to this particular point. I'm not making an excuse for any government. I'm not making an excuse for this government. After all, they knew what they were coming into. But I'm saying, if angels had come down in 2023 to govern Nigeria, the angels would face problem in Nigeria. No question about it.
Well, Professor Abbas, I mean, there isn't enough time in the day to have all the conversations we want to have, but I'm going to have to hand you over to our colleagues in Lagos, Ladi and Ayo, as we wrap up this segment.
Well, interesting conversations that we have had so far. Well, this is just, have to continue. Professor Ayede and Professor Abbas, we've had conversations with you before, and definitely this is not the last of it, but we have to let you go at this time. Thank you so much for your time today, Professor Emmanuel Ayede, as well as Professor Ademola Abbas. We appreciate your time with us today. Well, Mr. Shukutan, citizen engagement. People who are in government today were not in government 40 years ago. Now, here we are today. What's the assurance we have that another 40 years from now, we're not going to be dealing with the same issues?
Look, the way the Nigerian governance system is structured, and I've said this repeatedly over the years, in recent years in particular, that 25 years from today, 30 years from today, not wanting to be a naysayer or a prophet of doom, we will still be dealing with the same issues. And I say that because the fundamentals that deliver good governance to societies all over the world are simply not in place in this country. And one of those critical fundamentals is what you just spoke about now, which is having an actively engaged citizenry in the governance process. In Nigeria, it's missing. You might want to postulate as to why that is the case. For example, you might say, some would argue that because of our past of military interventions and the power distance problems that we have as a culture, in the African society, your authority figure, you are really not expected to question them or hold them into account. So, for example, in the Yoruba culture, you hear things like elders cannot lie, and those types of things. And that percolates down into the citizenry, such that when you add that to our military past, you just find that our people are subservient. You see it as a rebellion to ask questions.
You see that elders cannot lie. I find that comical because the elders were once kids. Right?
As you grow older, you assume...
Am I missing something here?
Yeah, as you grow older, you assume a toga of imperial wisdom that ensures that you can't lie.
And you assume that because you were beaten when you were younger, for lying, you will not lie over lying. Time. And it goes back to the same issue that we're talking about. So how do we ensure that this doesn't happen in the future? This has happened way too frequently.
Absolutely.
I cited, and please forgive me, one of the things that has been said about citizenship is that most of the time we don't learn from history, be it as a people or as government officials. We don't tend to learn from history. 1929 is just how many years ago? Was it 46 or 48 when Ransom Kuti engaged, the monarchy and the colonial rule of her day? How many years are we talking about here? Just 46 years ago, we know what happened. Ali must go. Earlier, I think it was earlier in the day, the protest that led to the coup. It was something performed by ordinary Nigerians against their government of the day. So, how do we ensure this doesn't happen in another number of years from now? We have to find a way to engage our people and get the people to be engaged, not just the federal government, but to engage the state governments significantly, engage the local governments significantly. I really wish we had been able to speak with Governor Uzodimma the other time.
Absolutely. So this, I think that there has to be a level of advocacy on the part of especially civil society and the media, to get citizens to understand how critical engagement is to development and how that connects to the quality of their lives, You know, a lot of times people tend to think that you are just making trouble when you talk about governance issues and all of that, forgetting that if you don't have those conversations, good governance will not come. And I like to say, you know, just borrowing from the very controversial, you know, comments from the current president during the elections, that good governance, you know, is not served a la carte. I say that now with a sense of responsibility. You've got to fight for it. And let me stop it at that without the other parts of that statement. You have to fight for good governance as a people. If you go to the United States, if you go to the UK, the EU, I cite France as a fantastic example of a society where the citizens are so alive and vibrant that I always say that if President Macron sneezes in a way that the citizens do not like, the following morning the citizens are all over the place. Whether it's on social media or physically on the streets, they're going to call him to account.
But I'm hoping we'll get to that point ourselves. But you were making some sense the other time before I interjected you. Could you please go ahead? What we need to do to have an actively engaged...
Absolutely. So what we need to have is a situation where civil society on the one hand and the media continues to drive the conversation and connect the dots with regards to the connect between good governance and our ability to engage across board, starting from the federal level, because, you know, that's where the overall policy setting takes place. That's where the direction setting takes place. But then moving down to subnationals, such that even at the state, the local government, and then with the other arms of government, Nigerians simply don't engage enough, and we need to keep reminding ourselves that we need to. People do not go to court to test the laws enough. You know, so you've got a landlord that is trying to eject you. He serves you a notice of 4 months, and then he brings some police guys or whatever to push you out of your house. Hello, you've got a right under the law. You are entitled to 6 months. And after that, it is only a court order that can push you out of that house. He must go to court to get that order, but that doesn't happen, and people just take it sitting down. Just
don't lose your train of thought. Yeah. Can I also sue the police for joining?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. You know, so we don't sue. People say you can't sue government, you can't sue the police, but it's not true. A lot of these things have been tested. You know, people have sued the Road Safety Commission, people have sued the state governments in, you know, Lagos, in Calabar. Policy changes have happened as a result of the outcomes of those lawsuits. People don't test the legislature. A lot of people don't know where the constituency offices of the legislators are, whether House of Reps or Senate or state houses of assembly. You know, people don't know their local government chairman. All of these levels of engagement need to improve in Nigeria for us to get good governance. For us not to find ourselves 30 years from today still battling with 5,000 megawatts of power. You know, I mean, just think about it. It's shocking to think that in 1999, my son is 25 years old today. In 1999, we had 5,000 megawatts of power 25 years ago. And here we are, in fact, it's less. We're actually distributing between 3,000 to 4,005 at any point in time in the last 1 year. You know, it's tragic to think that you look at the newspaper clippings and you find that the very same stories that we're battling against today were the ones that we battled against then.
Okay, but sorry. Let me come in here because, you know, talking about continuity, you know, with governance and looking at this present administration, when it came into power, I think they inherited about 70 trillion or thereabout in debt. Yep. So one thing I've noticed is every government, one to the other, they keep passing on debt. And I'm wondering, is there a way we can actually put a check on this? Because when you look at the current level of debt now, about 121 trillion, we can't really marry that with the development we see so far. How do you think we can actually check that? So it's not just debt, you know, these governments keep passing on.
There are two answers to that question. One is the accountability answer, where we say you've got to hold your governments to account to explain what they're doing with what essentially is your money. You know, the other side of it is to look at the governance process itself and ask questions. For example, why do we borrow so much? Why? It's simply because the revenues are not enough for the projects that we need to run. And in fact, it's gotten so bad now that we borrow to pay back our debts. You know, so at a point we were running at 110% revenue to debt service obligation. You know, that, in other words, the entire revenue of the federal government plus addition borrowing went into servicing debt obligations. So how did we find ourselves there? Why is the revenue base so low? What's happening with the tax net? Why isn't it being widened deliberately and systematically over the years? Why, there's so many whys with regards to the governance process, with regards to how the functioning of government. So we've got to address that, and then we've got to tie our minds to the accountability part of things as well. If we're able to do that, then you find that over the years, the governance process will improve, and then you would have a situation where you can start talking about consistent, measurable improvement in all of these indicators. Debt is only one of them. You've got so many others. So I think that's it. You look at the oil theft issue, for example, it's still the same issue that we're dealing with. And guess what? We're losing roughly, just rough estimates, and this is figures confirmed by federal officers, Ministry of Finance and all of that. We're losing $20 billion every year to oil theft alone. And, that's only one source of revenue leakage of this government, So all of these issues are issues that we've been battling with for a long time, and we've just simply got to say no more. And I guess that's one of the reasons why, for me, protests like this are absolutely critical as a form of engagement with the government.
Right, and definitely we do hope that someone listens, at this point, because at the end of the day, a protest is not just to destroy things, it's to try to, be heard, So thanks for that, Mr. Shoguto. Well, let's take the conversation now to, we have Dr. Shuaibu Idris, an economist and managing director and CEO, Timeline Consult Limited. He's joining us via Zoom from Ikoyi. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good evening, Ladia, and thank you for having me, and well done, the channel teams, for keeping us informed.
Thank you so much for coming on, and definitely it's still the same issue at this point, the protests, the hashtag, and bad governance. And, we've been talking a lot about policy so far. We've seen, different policies from this present administration, from subsidy removal to floating of the exchange rate. But if we go back in time, we've noticed that most of those governments always warned against profiteering. So looking at what we've seen so far, with the price of PMS and food prices, do you think these policies should actually have had this much negative impact on the economy, or is this just plain old profiteering also coming in here?
I don't think that there is issue of profiteering here, but issue of fundamentals. What do I mean by fundamentals? We've had, from time immemorial, if you like, from the days of our independence, governance of our country has always been what we call a welfare economy or a mixed economy. We are a little to the left, a little to the right, towards the center. We are neither pure capitalists, nor are we pure, say, socialist or welfarist economy. So the system we have run over the years has always been that of a bit of government subsidy here and there, support from the government in certain areas, be it education, health, water, other social services. Now, fast forward, population of Nigeria has increased, dynamics of the situations in the world has changed, and revenues are dwindling, demands for social services has increased, and therefore government's inability to meet the teeming demands of the populace is an issue. And therefore, government then decided to have a rethink and say, what can we afford to do? How much should we subsidize? And which aspect should we even subsidize? And if we are to subsidize, why should we even do the subsidy? I think those are the fundamental questions that gave rise to debates from, let's say, the beginning of this dispensation, democratic dispensation, during Obasanjo's regime, down to Yar'Adua's regime. If you remember, the petroleum pricing issues that led to several riots and protests, and strikes by the labor union, name it. So this isn't issue of profiteering per se. It is issue of economic fundamentals. Where do we want to be? Are we socialists? Are we capitalists? Are we welfareists? And whichever side of the pendulum we choose to operate from, then we need to agree on the principles and the parameters within which we want to operate. And I think that those are the issues at play right now. But before I let you go, Ladi, let me quickly see if I can interject to make a correction. I think Governor Hope Uzodinma got it a little wrong when he alluded to the fact that only the Igbo shops are being looted either in Lagos, Kano, Maiduguri, or other parts of the nation. It is on record. Even the Honorable Minister of Digital Economy has issued a statement regarding the vandalization of a digital hub in Kano that was vandalized and looted. Government House, Audubako Secretariat was looted and cars were burnt. So let us not begin to introduce a bit of trial element along the lines of this protest.
You know, Mr. Idris, it's very cheering that you talked about the style of economy or form of economy we're running, whether it's capitalist or socialist, it's undefined. It's very interesting that you put that out now, and you're trying to. I'm wondering, how does it connect directly or indirectly with good governance?
Well, thank you very much. I think one or two of the guests have tried to define what good governance is, and one of them, I can't remember the name, allude to the fact that good governance has indices that it dovetails to democracy. And I tend to ask, will we say, for example, Kuwait system of governance, which is not democratic, is it good governance or bad governance? Saudi Arabia, or let's even cast our minds back to Libya under, Muammar Gaddafi, if you like, the dictator, or even Saddam Hussein, the dictator in Iraq, were there good governance?
Interesting. Well, I'm pretty sure that we'll get back. That's good. Okay.
The best of services in the situation that they found themselves. I like to state the good governance we are talking about, and the challenge that we are having currently in Nigeria is not necessarily out of the entire collapse of the system. We have had a confused economy that we are running, because sometimes we take decisions, we come out with policies that you tend to be confused. Are we socialists? Are we capitalists? Are we welfareists? So system of governance has been, if you like, a cocktail, not just one way. And when trying to correct a cocktail, it comes with pains, and these are some of the pains that we are experiencing currently.
Interesting, but I mean, if the doctor is going to tell me while giving me the injection, well, you might feel a slight pain, but we didn't get that information, did we? Let me ask Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, thank you.
Do you agree with him?
Well, I somehow agree with him, and I think I have that analogy anyway. I said, if you're supposed to do a surgery 15 years ago, and you delay the surgery, and you do it 15 years after, at 15 years after, you've add 15 years more to your life. So that energy, you maybe in 15 years ago, you could have just, after the surgery, you get up from the bed maybe a week after, but now it could take months. It could take a lot of time before you get up. I think that's what's happening to Nigeria. Some of the decisions that have been taken are decisions that would have been taken when not really that our economy was buoyant, but we're not in this kind of stage that we are now.
But we've always, I'm sorry for butting in, but we've always contested with government when they come with anti-people policies. You remember SFEM, the first tier and second tier foreign exchange market under the Babangida government. You remember the structural adjustments program and how the people, the civil society, including economists and all of them, came out that time and said, these things are not good for Nigeria.
You see, the problem we have as a country, sometimes we do what we call copy and paste. So you see it work in the UK, it works in the US, you think it will work here. Let me give you a simple example of what we are grappling now, what's causing all the issues that we are having now. We've been copying and pasting for the past, from Emefiele to Cardoso, hike the rate. So when you bring a World Bank project of, okay, the only way you can fight inflation is to reduce liquidity in the system, you are killing a business, and you are killing an informal business. So it's not rocket science. It's things we know. But why we decide to do copy and paste? The World Bank is not in Damaturu. The World Bank does not know Damaturu. The World Bank does not know Portinsco. The World Bank have not been to Nguru.
Well, they will argue with you.
No, they've not been there.
You know, but I mean, I understand the point that you're making.
When you take a system, you look at the precarity of your economy.
But the reason I will try to jump in is there an economic direction for Nigeria from the very beginning? Because that's perhaps the basis of the issues being raised by Mr. Idris. Because if there is an economic direction, for instance, Dubai, everyone knows the oil of Dubai is tourism. I mean, a good number of people, okay, this is what the US stands for, this is what India stands for, this is what China stands for. So is there an economic direction to Nigeria where when someone says, Nigeria, this is the economy that comes to mind?
No, we don't have that. We don't have
How significant is that as a problem?
That's what's the best. Remember, we don't have a common vision. You remember Vision 2020, House for the year 2000. The former administration, they came up with I've forgotten that their own that they took. They said at the point the world richest man brigade came and said, how can you draw an economic policy without involving your people? Your people are the richest. They said, okay, that policy, they will take it back to the lab. That was during Buhari time. They never came back from the lab. And then the next time they came out, they saw that cash policies are good. When you do conditional cash transfer, they don't have data. They say, oh, it happened in Bangladesh. They didn't go to ask the Bangladeshian government whether they had data. They just came in there and said, okay, let's transfer cash. It was hijacked. So it's more or less like, was work in one place, we think it will work here.
All right.
It's not like that. But let me give you an answer before you come like this.
Yes.
FX. How can you drive down inflation? How can you keep saying your reserve is? I heard the Minister for Finance telling to give us the state of nature. Say our reserve has gone up from when they came to 37. And I asked myself, when you came, what was the exchange rate? Your reserve have gone up. What is the exchange rate? The exchange rates have moved even from when your reserve was even at 32. The exchange rate was almost 1,300. Your reserve is 37. The exchange rate is 1,600. Inflation is driven by your exchange rate. So what are you saying about? It's more or less like a man say, I have so much money, and then my people are hungry and keeping the money. What are you keeping the money for? The basic things everybody needs from government is prosperity, security and prosperity. Why are we saying bad governance? It's because there's no prosperity, there's no security. And unfortunately, the leadership have not even taken the bull by the horn. I listened to the Imo State government going back 8 years ago, and he has forgotten that he was also part of the system for the past 16 years. He has been the PU. He was in PDP before he came to APC. He was a serving senator under the PDP. He was even a man that was almost being arrested by EFCC over a contract agreement that was given to him by a good Lord Jonathan for the election process. He diverted to APC.
Anyway, I was just going to talk about definitely the whole issue of copying and pasting. You mentioned other countries that we all started raising rates at the same time. We've seen their own inflation numbers start to come down to the central bank target, but here we're still seeing it moving farther away. So looking at the situation right now, I want to bring your attention to investors, local investors. We're seeing the market now, it has closed and it's down.
Yes.
So we're already seeing a reaction now from local investors. to these protests?
Well, local investors have, there's no local investor again in Nigeria market. Retail investor or a local investor. What you see in Nigeria investors are high net investors. When you talk about local investor, you're talking about retail investors. It's only when you have food you can become a retail investors. Do you see the bank? They are struggling to meet up their recapitalization. Before now, a retail investor will say, okay, let me just buy 1,000 units of this because I think it's just 19,000. Or they don't even have 19,000. So what you are seeing in the market, they say the barometer of any economy is normally measured by what happened in the stock market of the economy. But Nigeria will tell you, oh no, most of our giants are not listed in the stock market, so you cannot use that as a clue to say this is what is happening in our economy. What is going to happen is that because the economy stayed in Abuja, you see, when you have an economy that is largely driven by, you want foreigners to build your economy. You are not taking ownership of your economy. This is what you have. Now, let me give you an instance. How can you bring down cost of goods and services? We've been saying it. I think in your program we said it there. Government, take a bite of your revenue. How can I be importing milk and all those things? You are telling me today I'll bring it at 1,500 and you expect me to sell it low? You can't have a fixed rate on a importation of household item. Fix it. If you know, it's not Nigeria, it's comedy. You know why I say it's comedy? You keep crying that your naira is undervalued, and then you now overvalue your naira to your people also. You are not saying, okay, what is the true value of the naira? If you ask the minister for finance, he will tell you that the true value of the naira should be between 800 and 1,000. So why are you not telling me to bring in good at 1,700? Why are you not telling me, okay, this is the true value, let me put it fixed? Now they wanted to do it with Dangote. Now Dangote refinery, finally the president said, with Dangote it will be fixed. Because he's going to buy in naira. But you've forgotten that Nigerians are also buying in naira. So you see, this country is, you know, they come up with ban A, ban B. It's only in Nigeria that they come up with policy that you sit back and say, how did you people think?
And so some
ban A now, ban A will have life for 20 hours. Ban E or ban D does not even see life for 3 days. If you are in business, as a businessman, as a capitalist, who will you service? The man that pay you 66 naira or the man that pay you 226 naira? It's common arithmetic. Like he said, 25 years ago, 5,000 megawatt. Today, 4,000 something megawatt. Then tomorrow, we are going to get people from ban B, so that from ban B to ban A, so that we can reduce subsidy. So because subsidy is high. Tomorrow now, there's a subsidy that's going to 150 billion.
For you, what you are essentially saying is, you know, there needs to be some harmonization.
Look, it's not just harmonization. I think the government, I'm sorry to use the word I want to use, I'm on national television, I think this is the most arrogant government we've ever had.
Now,
when I mean that, I need to explain why I'm saying that. The government doesn't think this is what the people want. This is what they want to do. And they go ahead and do it. Like you said in the introduction, you were trying to ask him, when they told us this policy, did you tell us that we'll go under through surgery? If you're going to a doctor, they'll tell you, okay, you say, well, what's the side effect of this surgery? They will tell you, okay, you sleep like this, you do like this, you do like this. But when they told us, they said, the Nigerian problem is subsidy. When we remove subsidy, our problem is gone. We remove subsidy, the problem has tripled. So, do we have a common economic goal to move Nigeria?
I know that there are some. I'm going to ask you about, you know, subnationals, but I would gladly have some figures.
We have some data actually out today. PMI, that's the business, the one that tracks business activity in Nigeria, that came out already, and it's for July, and we're below that 50-point level, showing business activity tanked in July. We also have cost of healthy diet in Nigeria. That has increased in 6 months. It started about 800 naira per adult. That's for a healthy diet. It started at 800 naira in January this year. That has moved all the way to 1,200 naira. So we've seen about 45% increase. And that is the cheapest, you know.
No, the cheapest food, I was telling people, the cheapest food those days, when we are talking, they said, if they send you to jail, you're just going to be eating beans. Do you know? Beans. Then if you go to a house, I remember when we were at home, we want to talk about how poor you are. They say you people are eating beans. Today, beans is more expensive than rice. So it's the rich that are eating beans. So that's how far we've gone. We see that they want to intervene. They say there is bag of rice. They will buy. They calculate. They say that the president have intervened. Bag of rice 50,000, 50 kg for 50,000 naira. Minimum wage is 70,000. So if I buy the bag of rice at 50,000, tomatoes they say it's 15,000. By the time I buy the tomatoes, well, how will I cook it?
Mr. Idris, part of the issues that we have raised over time has been every time everyone is looking to the macroeconomic issues of the country. The exchange rate, the federal government policies and all, where expectedly the subnationals will take a cue and follow. But lining that with what Mr. Mohammed reminded us a little while ago, that we're a largely small business nation. Nigeria is largely run by small businesses. He said 90%. Global figures say on the average, 60 to 70% of every economy has a very vibrant small and medium enterprise community. Now, lining the fact that we always look to the federal government, we always take on whoever is the president at any time, Buhari, Tinubu, Jonathan, whoever it is. So long as you are president, you are the one whose head hits the coconut. But the state government, we tend to not give them as much attention, not call them out as much as we should, not engage them as much as we ought to. Meanwhile, every Nigerian is from a state, lives in a state. How significant is that in the whole conversation around good governance or a lack of it?
Thank you very much for that question. Unfortunately, the bane of our society starts and ends with abdication of responsibilities. What do I mean? An average Hausa man will tell you that we have a saying in Hausa that when I point a finger to you, my finger to you, one, the rest of the fingers are pointing at me. So let's start the discourse on good governance or ending bad governance. What is government itself, and who are those in government? Does government start and end, say, with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu or the members of the National Assembly or ministers or even the federal civil servant? Does government start and end with the gentleman that is chairman or the gentle lady that is chair of a local government or the councillors or the state governors or these? Government is amorphous. Government is every one of us. And each one of us is not just a player, but a major stakeholder. But most of the time, we run away and we shy away from looking at what do I need to do in order that I make the system better. I tell you, my brother, average Nigerian does not care about who is the councillor representing his ward. Now, where does government start from? From that kindergarten level, if you like. So you need to get interested, you need to get involved as to who becomes your councillor, who becomes the chairman of the local government, who is representing you at the state assembly, who is representing you as governor, before you escalate it to, say, House of Reps or Senate or even the president. Now, as long as we all think that the problem starts and ends with Mr. President, we have missed the point. So the good thing should start first from with me as my humble self, before I demand from the larger community or the larger society. Every one of us thinks, oh, those in authority are thieves, those in authority are rogues. Meanwhile, you give that person a responsibility to even follow the simplest of rules, he or she will be the first to be a lawbreaker. Now, as long as we don't begin to correct ourselves, so long as we will continue to have bad governance and bad system. If I may ask, those in authority today, do they come from planet Moon? Were they not handpicked from our community? The population, that 215 or 220 million that we have, These guys come from us. So if they are bad and if they are running bad systems, it means we are the people who are bad and we need to start the corrections from ourselves. It is interesting that we demand for good governance, but also it is interesting that we demand for good citizenship, that people, Nigerians, should know what to do, when to do, how to do, and then when they do what is right, as espoused and as demanded by the principles of living in an environment, then you will have the right to demand for good governance. Remember the great journalist Finney Jason's law on corruption. For want of time, I may not be able to give it in full, but his own analogy is an average Nigerian thought process of corruption is measured by the length of distance between him and the position of the corrupt practice.
All right, Mr. Idris, thank you very much for that analogy. I have a couple of questions for you with which we'll wrap up this segment, but let me quickly give a quick update. The 11 more arrests have been recorded in Niger State. And then we'll seize this opportunity to remind you that fake news is everywhere. Before you circulate any information, please verify it. If you're not sure about it, don't circulate it. Let's not add more fuel to the fire already burning. We expect a live briefing from the Minister of the FCT. He had earlier released a statement commending protesters for being peaceful. And then things seem to have gotten out of hand now in certain parts of the FCT, so we await that live briefing in a moment. Now, so let me throw a question to Mr. Shaibu quickly. We're talking about the demands of these protesters. One of them is reinstatement of a corruption-free subsidy regime. As an economist, let me ask you this. If the president obliges this and reintroduces fuel subsidy, corruption-free as they say, what are the economic implications of that, if any?
I think you will agree with me in general that the best allocator of resources are the market forces. We, fundamentally and sincerely believe that when and where market forces are allowed to interplay, chances are allocation of resources will be transparent, will be fair, and will be justifiable. As long as you keep, operating a bit of a rentier economy where a few who are connected or, strategically positioned or they are opportune, so long as you will continue to have a corrupt systems of allocation of resources. You're looking at fuel subsidy as just a minute portion of the corruption, rentier system that we run today. Go to the electricity, distribution and, the generation, the transmission and the distribution. Imagine the quantum of the so-called subsidy being given. Like, is it Mukhtar or the other, discussant alluded to the fact that how will you even have a mechanism where you tell your citizens that a certain part of the citizens are band A, another part are band B, another part are band E. Band A will get 20 hours electricity supply. Come on, this is apartheid. This in itself is slavery within the country. So we have inadvertently, created a bit of, if you like, the Indian caste system. Those who are in the Band E, area, what crime have they committed to Nigeria to be condemned to 4 hours electricity supply? Again, these allude to the kind of situation and the system that I discussed earlier. What kind of economic system do you want to run? Is it capitalist? Is it pure capitalist? Is it, welfare economy? Is it socialist? Which economy are we running? We are just running confused system. And as long as we are running confused system, so long we will continue to be so confused and we will be having policy somersaults. Otherwise, how do you explain, for example, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the first day of his inauguration said, I have decided to remove subsidy. Is the fuel subsidy, has it really been removed? We hear that on the average, billions of naira daily is still being paid on subsidy. If we could remove, the controls in diesel importation and selling, why can't we remove the controls in PMS and other crude and other petroleum product pricing? Why can't we find a better way to give succo to the downtrodden? Why can't we have mass transit programs or systems that can help to reduce the burden? Why can't we improve in haulage? Why can't we improve in so many areas that can then help to lower the prices of goods and services arising from allowing the market forces to determine the allocation of these resources? Remember,
I'm gonna have to, sorry to cut in there, but we are running out of time, and I want you to engage Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed just a little bit about what should be going on right now in the minds of our leaders. We, of course, Mr. Ayo and Ladi, they've been talking a lot about subnationals and what these subnationals have done over the years to, hoodwink the people, so to speak, where everyone is focused on the federal government. Meanwhile, at local levels, at state levels, we're not seeing the impact of governance on the people. Now, with everything that's happened today, we're seeing imposition of curfews, we're seeing protests that have gone awry. With everything that's happened, what should the government, in your view, both at state and federal levels, be doing to ensure that the next days, the days ahead, do not cause more problems to the Nigerian people?
Okay, thank you. We also said some of the problems we are having now, in terms of the protests, I think were caused by utterances from most of the governors. They have been so militant in their utterances. Some of them say it is change of regime. I don't know, are we in military when you keep talking about change of regime? Since President Tinubu removed subsidy, federation allocation has tripled. It has tripled. The government have collected more than they have ever collected before. But the development is not commensurate. So for things to change, just like we are all protesting, we need to begin to ask them to be accountable. It's only in Nigeria that your house is burning in Onitsha, and the person is crying and will be calling, oh, Tinubu, Tinubu, Tinubu. So, but again, you won't blame them. Because even the federal legislators, the House, the ones in the state, the ones in the federal, I think somebody was saying, you don't even know your legislators will even go and report and say, look, this is what we are going through. If you are not in a personal local government or state, they classify you people based on your party. They answer you based on your party. I think what we need to see from those in government, especially state governors, is nationality. Where you go to Abuja for allocation of resources and then send your commissioners and then tie local government fund to governors. Thank God for the Supreme Court judgment. But I think government should take responsibility, a lot of governors. But because we have been so indoctrinated to military regime, a military whereby everything stopped, they say the box stop at the commander-in-chief. So that is the mentality we have. That's why we don't question our governors, especially local government. They go away with a lot of things. It's only in local government you pay land use charge, whether through the state government. They are paying land use charge. Your house is not even tied, and you keep paying that land use charge. Nobody is asking questions. The schools are not working. So I think state government need to up their game. If you look at the 36 states, if you look at foreign direct investment that have come in, one state alone, Lagos State, account for about 80% of foreign direct investment. And you cannot even attribute it because Lagos State is doing something so fantastic. You could just attribute it to the fact that most of the federal establishment, most of the business headquarters are in Lagos. It's not that Lagos State have done something to attract this investment. So when you have other states struggling for the remaining 20%, so I think a lot of government need to come up with policies that will impact the life of the people. Of all these demonstrations that have been happening, the only state governor, I stand to be corrected, that have responded to his people, especially the business community, is the governor of Jigawa State. That came out and said he's giving all SMEs about 150,000.
We have to be able to get Mr. Idris's thoughts. You know, you said that government is everybody, so the blame is on all of us. You know, so basically, if any government, in any government, there must be a head. There has to be a leader. Is it safe to say that in our case here in Nigeria, the buck stops at the president's table, and he is the one that has to handle everything, you know, as regards the situations that we're in right now? Because if we're talking about subnationals, we'll continue talking about subnationals for the rest of the year. But do you think that the president should maybe spread himself across these subnationals? I don't know what he's going to do, but some way that the buck stops at his table. Should he be taking more responsibility for what the Nigerian people are going through right now that have led to these protests?
For President Bola be everywhere for two reasons. Number one, as a human being, you can only be in one place at a time. Yes, you can say he can appoint vice-gerents or representatives. But remember, we are running a presidential system of government. I think about 1 or 2 weeks ago, President Bola Tinubu did come out to say, when you are demanding things from me, also demand from the governors. Like I did allude earlier on, Nigerians need to wake up. Every one of us is paying a price for bad governance. This bad governance did not start yesterday. It didn't start 5 years or 10 years ago. It's been there with us. An average Nigerian is a mini government. Your house, you either have to dig a well, or if you are well-to-do, have a borehole, you have to have an inverter, you have to have a generator, you have to have a security man. So each and every one of us is a local government in a way in our own houses. But how much do we cry about even the roads that are just by our side, by the in front of our gates? You know, how many of us care about the gutters that are littered with so much debris that we drink sachet of water and throw on the street? How many of us care so much about this or that? If we want to ask for good governance, for heaven's sake, let us start first with ourselves. What are we doing? I keep asking, what is my own responsibility? Am I delivering that responsibility to the best of my knowledge and ability? Then when I do that, then I can demand from the other person or the other parties. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold those in authority, our elected representatives, responsible or liable to some of the things that are happening. But let the truth be told, each and every one of us is guilty in one way or another of this bad governance. And before you begin to ask for good governance, ask yourself, what am I doing? He who comes to equity should come with clean hands. Your hands cannot be dirty and then you are coming to demand for this or that.
Yeah. Okay, but I think he's made that good closing point.
It's a good place to anchor.
He who comes to equity must come with
clean hands.
Clean hands. You know, this whole idea of governance is everybody's responsibility, but a lot of people don't understand, and that's the point that Prof was making before he left, when he said that when you go destroy things that you should be using, not the people that you are fighting against, you should be using those things. How do you think that the funding to replace it will come? And then you come tomorrow and cry foul, oh, they're budgeting too much money. It's quite a crazy situation.
Well, me and you, we have quite a lot of debates about this, because the reason why you have people who can loot government property and loot these things and not treat them like debt is because of the trust deficit. They are distant from it. It's an elitist thing you do, and then they don't understand what's going on.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. Well, this is where we will wrap up the Abuja end of this conversation to prepare for 7 o'clock. Well, thanks for your time. It's been a great time. We'll be back here tomorrow to give you more updates on what happens with the protest. Hopefully, tomorrow is better if the protest does continue. I'm Terry Ikumi.
Please stay safe, don't vandalize anything. I'm Kayla Megwa. Well, certainly you aren't really going anywhere, are you? You're still just going to prepare for the next one at 7 p.m. But we also need to take a short break now. We have to thank our guests who've been here. By the way, Mr. Shukpita, if you can just get your closing comments on this. You've spoken a lot about the economy, and we spared you because we don't want you to be answering economic questions, really. But, what would be your appeal both to the people and to government?
I think for the people, we need to insist on what we want. We're doing the right thing by protesting, but we must avoid violence. And, you can't be destructive in the process of your protests. And for the government, some of these demands are pretty easy to address. For example, the cost of governance, just a token, let me not call it tokenistic, a symbolic gesture from government to show good faith, so that would assuage the anger and reduce the temperature in the country. And then there are some, potentially controversial things that I think, in my opinion, we need to start looking at. We've got to think out of the box. So the government needs to move away from this neoliberal ideology that we seem to be pushing and look at other areas. For example, if you look to the East, China, India, and how did they develop in a 30-year framework to get them to where they are now? They were very organic and indigenous in their solutions. So, for example, talking about removal of subsidy, it's very neoliberal. But the irony is that the people that preach those solutions still subsidize things. So can we fix? I think we need to go back to price fixing. Well, fixing of the price of fuel and fixing of exchange rates. Because this is what the other
I don't
people
think
that
you want the economists to take your right now.
No, I know that they don't agree with me.
I don't think
they don't want to hear it.
Let's not even start another conversation right now. Because I can see Mr. Mohammed already shaking his head. What's this guy talking about?
No, and incidentally, I'm an economist as well. So I do know what I'm saying.
Okay, good. We'll open this chapter another day. Thank you so much, Mr. Sheikh Shukpito, for being here this morning, this evening, to talk to us about all of these issues. Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We always also had Mr. Shoaib Idris, who is Managing Director and CEO of Timeline Consult Limited. He's an economist. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Idris. So we take a short break, and when we return, it'll be our Coasting Home time.